Okay, I came here to El Rancho, El Rancho, because they used to have pretty good, pricing. However, you know, they are like all the rest of them. Some things will be a good price, and then other things won't be a good price. But what I ended up buying was, I ended up buying 2.5 dozen of eggs, medium size, for $5.49. I ended up buying a bag of a 2 pound bag of cheese for $8.99. Then they had some kind of snack, right? And it was 2 for $1. So I wanted to try that out. I don't know what it is. Then I bought some shredded coconut and some chiles and some carrots and some ginger, and my total came up to my total came up to $25.44 with the membership, of course, right? If you didn't have a membership, then it would have actually cost me almost $4 more. Okay, well, at least $3 more. So yeah, the reason why, oh yeah, and I bought some cabbage. The reason why I decided to try going here instead of a usual store is, I haven't been here in like years, and I used to always come here to get my eggs in large quantities when I was a bigger family. Also, they used to have catfish, bulk catfish pieces that you could get, inexpensive, and make catfish nuggets. Okay, I didn't look for that because I was really thinking I was gonna just go in and purchase the eggs and leave. And that didn't happen. I did go in and I started, comparing prices, comparing quality. Like the carrots, they were 79 cents a pound. And the cabbage was 69 cents a pound. Right. And for whatever reason, I got the shredded coconut. I just got it. For whatever reason, I just got it. I guess something told me to buy it. Just like something told me to buy the chilies. Chili's. Something just told me to buy it. You know. So I just bought it. You know, like I said, that was a good $30. Well, not quite. But it was $30 purchase. And lots of eggs. You know, I have been cutting back on the eggs that I've been using because the eggs have went up so high. You know, and usually I do get the large eggs, but these were the medium eggs. Cabbage. I did buy spinach. I like spinach too. I really like spinach. But I don't know. There's something about cabbage. I know what it is. The crunchiness of cabbage taste. It satisfies that crunchiness that I be wanting. That I don't get from spinach. Even when the spinach is fresh. So I can use the head of cabbage. I can shred it. I can cut it up. I can. You know, it's just so much more convenient to just have it already shredded up, and it'll only cost you like $1.70 at Aldi's. But once it's shredded up, it's not the same. It's not the same to try to put the shredded cabbage like when you're trying to fry cabbage and sausage. It's not the same. So I've been watching videos on how, like I said, on how people used to prepare foods post-war back in the day, and you know, I had no idea that they used to do a similar egg drop soup with their ramen noodles, and I was like, I didn't think about that, right? I didn't think about that because, you know, I don't really, you know, do ramen anymore, but you know, it seems to make sense to me that you can use, you know, the ramen packets and scramble, well, just do the whole ramen packet and noodles, and add some scrambled eggs. And I was thinking to myself, yes, I can do that. You know, maybe then I'll start eating more ramen noodles, because right now I really don't like ramen noodles that much, because, you know, it hits my bloodstream so fast, you know. But I'm thinking that if I offset it with more protein of the egg and the egg drop, I think I could do it. Yeah, I do. I think I can do it. We're going to try it anyway. We are going to try it. We're going to try adding scrambled egg mixture to the ramen noodles. And even though I would get the egg drop soup from the Chinese restaurant, and it didn't have very much in it except broth, a thickening agent, some spices, and egg. And you've seen how much I would pay for that. I would pay like $3.50 for a serving of egg drop soup at chains. You know, and I did try to make it myself, but I was using chicken broth, you know, just regular chicken broth. So it did lack some of the spices. When I added, you know, like green onions, you know, then it had a different flavor to it, and it was actually pretty good. But at the time, you know, even, you know, a bunch of green onions, you know, was running you over $1. So I didn't do that too much. So yeah, I feel pretty good about, you know, my purchase. Because I mean, even technically, if I chop up the cabbage and fry it up with some eggs, you know, technically that could be a meal. It really could. And considering, you know, that I could also make it into some type of patty, you know, or even some type of omelet with, you know, I can do this. I mean, really. And, you know, I'm like I said, it's a challenge. It is a challenge. You know, I don't want to add, you know, like potatoes, you know, to my diet, even though potatoes don't necessarily have to be bad for you. Now, I had watched some suggestions, because I do have some canned vegetables that I have in my pantry that I need to, you know, start eating up and then replacing. And, you know, the idea of having, you know, some corn fritters sounded pretty good. It did. It sounded pretty good to me. So I'll probably be making some corn fritters pretty soon. I'm gonna let my dog out for a minute here at this park, because she's been such a good doggy. She's been sitting in the car, and she deserves to get out for a minute. Not long, but for a minute. I have been drinking more of the tea and milk, and not so much the coffee. I have coffee. Come on. But I haven't wanted to drink the coffee, you know, without the creamer. I mean, I can still do the milk, but it's just that if I make the tea, I'm also looking out for my blood pressure. So I've been feeling pretty good about that. I've been keeping up with my lightweight exercises. Snoopy. Snoopy. Snoopy, come here. Look at her. She's down here shooting. Okay. So she did have to go pee, and she did have to go poo. So it was a good thing that I stopped. So now we just, I wanted to take a ride. That's what I wanted to do. Like I said, I can get air conditioning in the car cheaper than, trying to, hook up my window unit. It's now 87 degrees according to the vehicle temperature gauge. And so, yeah. Like I said, we get used to wanting what we want, and eating what we're used to eating. And a lot of those meals, that they were talking about, I was very familiar with those meals, right? But, the diet that we're eating now, is one that, it's based off of preference rather than, necessity. So this one lady, she was stating how, she would incorporate, beans, throughout her meals. So she'll make a pot of beans and then, portion them out, fix them different ways, which, I did do that. I practiced it a little bit with the pinto beans, right? I had made pinto beans, and I mixed it up with some black beans, some pinto and black beans, and added some meat to it, and then ate it with beans and rice, and it was good. It was really good. other half of the beans, I refried them. And then I ate those with some flour tortillas and meat and, like a burrito, basically. Made it into a burrito. And it was good, right? But what I hadn't thought about was making my own baked beans. That was one thing that I hadn't thought about. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, it would taste really good, because I usually like my baked beans, mixed in with some sausage and, and that's almost a meal right there. Well, it is a meal right there, but, it would taste really delicious with some type of meat, on the side. But this is one thing that I have to remember is, yes, I do need the additional protein because I am getting older. I am losing muscle mass, and my metabolism is slower. So I have to figure out a way to, my money is low. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to get the nutrition that I need, paying the least amount of money, right? I'm glad I bought the flaxseed, because the flaxseed will offer fiber and, and protein. I believe vitamin B too. The vitamin B12. Damn, I'm gonna have to cut this nail down. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for sure. Right? Because even the people who try to, say that they're going to feed their family, off of $30, $50 a week, right? They have to have some staples, right? They have to have something already, that they can use. You can't just, not have any spices, not have any, carrots and onions and, and spices are really, really expensive. And that was what I was looking at when I went to the Mexican store, because before, you could go to the Mexican store and their spices will be more or less in bulk. So you can buy as much as you can afford rather than the pre-packaging thing, but they didn't have that. They did not have that. It was, all of it was pre-packaged. And so you couldn't buy it based off of the quantity that you need. So, yeah. I guess we will have to go back to Winco and see what they got going on, because Winco, they do have bulk buying. They have bulk buying, and you just portion out the amount that you need. So it's 88 degrees right now. It's almost 3 o'clock. So they also was talking about like the pea salad. I remember I love pea salad. It's like the best thing besides cabbage is pea salad. Now just regularly cooked, peas, I don't like it. But some frozen peas, yeah, I could do that with some cheese, red onions, and I could do that. So another thing, that becomes, a concern when you're on a fixed budget is portion size. Portion size becomes, an important part of sticking to the budget. Yesterday, like I said, I worked so hard, I didn't even feel like doing my lightweight exercises today. I didn't feel it. Wasn't feeling it. Not that I'm not gonna do it. I just didn't feel like doing it, in the early morning. I'll probably do it later on. That was a lot of lifting that I did yesterday. Felt like I was back at Amazon. So yeah. This is actually what you would consider to be like harvest season. We're at the threshold of harvest season. And this is where you have to till your harvest, because the weather's going to change, the energy's going to change, and we'll be in Virgo season before you know it. Okay? Before you know it, we'll be in Virgo season. And sometimes I have to tell myself, what's the date? What's the date? Because sometimes my mind is still back in July. And we're already damn near a week into August. then September, we're all going to be feeling pretty good because the temperature will probably be somewhat moderate, somewhat, and people are, going to be thinking about, the approaching winter. Some people are already thinking about the approaching winter. Like a lot of seniors, they're starting their crochet projects for the winter time. Their knitting projects for the winter time. I had a sweater that I had started and ran out of yarn and couldn't find the matching yarn, and I just stopped. Just too hot to be thinking about, having, a bulky, sweater, on my lap while I'm, trying to make it, create it. And there are, groups out there that you can go and, collab with. You don't have to do the projects that you want to do on your own. They have whole groups of sewing. They have whole groups of crocheting. They have whole groups of crocheting. They even have whole groups of painting. That's what you want to do. It's just that with the economy getting so bad, it's like, do you really, when people are considering the bare necessities, do you really think that, it's wise, to buy something, for aesthetics, when you're struggling, to buy, healthy food. And then some people, they're struggling with trying to buy healthy foods because they need medication. And it's just like, it's not going to be good all the way around. It's not going to be good. And there had been talk about another stimulus. Whether or not they gave a stimulus out there, we wouldn't know, right? We really don't know what they do with our tax money, right? And the reason why I say that is because, say for instance, the federal government, decides that, to withdraw the money that they had been given to help out with, to help states out. And then, it's like, okay, well, where's that money going to go now? Now that you're not going to pay for these programs, now that you're not going to, to sponsor these programs, they're not letting us know where that money is being reallocated to. Of course you want, you want to have, states be more responsible for, their, for their state, especially when, they're not cooperating with the standards of the federal government, right? So that was something that was brought to my attention today, was anarcho-capitalism, which is a term that I'm not really familiar with, but I looked it up, and I shared it on my Facebook page. The reason why I'm saying this is because there has been so much emphasis on the federal government, and with this distraction, you all don't even pay attention about what's going on in your local area, what they're doing, right? Y'all are sitting up here, blasting Trump and the Republican Party, but then, in your own city, they're changing zoning, they're raising prices, they're changing laws left and right, and y'all are like so distracted in your feelings, and you really need to pick your lip up off of the ground and start paying attention to what's happening in your surroundings. And I blame California and New York for some of these things that is causing the federal government to pull out. It's like, oh no, because they're not being cooperative with the federal government. So the federal government is withdrawing the funds, right? And is forcing them, to be more autonomous, because that's what they're choosing to do, right? And then they're making these changes based off of, their authority to make them, as long as they're not conflicting with the federal government, law. And then, so that is, the federal government is more concerned about federal employees, government employees, and international affairs. And everything else is at the state level, right? Everything else is at the state level. But like I said, y'all are so busy watching what's going on at the macro level of our government, of the whole United States. But what's really making you mad is what's going on in your local neighborhood. And your local neighborhood is doing things like what California and New York has done, where they're, creating toll roads, where they're creating, state tax and city tax, and yeah. Y'all messing yourselves up. You're messing yourselves up.